back at him tonight. 372 is where you go if you want to be turning. And Brother Dean sang this song to start Sunday school on this past Sunday morning. And I had looked into this song once before, but then he inspired me singing it and leading it for me to look into it again, because it's got a unusual title, Let the Lower Lights Be Burning. And I found out some of the history of the hymn, but some of the history of what the heck that means would be good too. But all along America's east and west seaboards, the Gulf Shore, and along the Great Lakes region, lighthouses stood on the shore of major harbors. And along with lighthouses, there were also lower lights to guide ships into the harbor. Of course, you see a lot of decorations of lighthouses here at Landmark Baptist Church. When there were large rocks near the shore, the lower lights helped the pilots to steer clear of them at night. Lower lights were placed along the shore at even intervals. If a ship was coming into the harbor at night, the pilot would see the evenly spaced lower lights. If there was a gap in the reflection of the lights, that meant that there was a large rock between the ship and the entrance to the harbor. The pilots would avoid sailing into these dark areas, knowing that the rocks blocked the lights from showing across the waves. Now, you might say, well, that gives us some idea. Well, how did the hymn come about? Songwriter Philip Bliss was traveling with the famous evangelist Dwight L. Moody, and while preaching, Mr. Moody told a true story, and I think it fit very well with the song. Moody said, one dark stormy night on Lake Erie, the winds were howling and the rain was relentless. The waves rolled like mountains and not a star in the sky could be seen. A ship was rolling with huge waves and trying to make its way into Cleveland Harbor. At last the captain saw the lighthouse for Cleveland Harbor, but he could not see the lower lights. The captain said to the pilot, "Is this Cleveland Harbor?" The pilot responded, "Yes, sir, it is Cleveland Harbor." "Where are the lower lights?" the captain asked. "They must have gone out, sir." And then the captain said, "Can you make it into the harbor without the lower lights?" "We must, sir," the pilot said, "or we will perish in the storm," was the pilot's reply. With a strong hand, with a brave heart, the pilot turned the ship's wheel toward Cleveland Harbor, but the ship missed the channel and crashed onto the rocks. The boat sank, and over 200 people lost their lives. So what's the application here? Well, Brother Moody kind of put that into perspective. He said, "Brethren, the Master will take care of the great lighthouse of salvation. But it is our job to keep the lower lights burning to guide men safely to Him." After hearing Mr. Moody tell this story, Philip Bliss wrote the words to this wonderful old hymn. Now, just a couple of things about Philip Bliss. He was born in a log cabin in Pennsylvania back in 1838. From a young age, Philip loved music and singing. At age 10, while selling vegetables to help support the family, Bliss first heard a piano. At age 11, he left home to make his own living. At age 11, very destitute family. He worked in sawmills, he took odd jobs, he worked in timber camps, and while working, he regularly went to school to further his education. At the time of the composition, none of his songs, by the way, were ever copywritten, and I thought, well, that was rather interesting too. But Bliss was an itinerant music teacher later on, and on horseback, he went from community to community, accompanied by a pump organ, of all things. In July of 1860, the Normal Academy of Music was held in New York, and musicians of renown were administering the 6-week event. Bliss was excited about it, but when he realized he could in no way afford the expense of the school, he was heartbroken. He knew it would be a great experience for him, but he had no money. When Mr. Bliss's wife's grandmother, Allen, noticed his sad demeanor, she was full of sympathy. She asked him what it cost, and he replied that it would cost as much as $30. After telling him that $30 was a good deal of money, She'd hold him of an old stocking into which she'd been dropping pieces of silver for a good many years. She had Bliss count the amount of money in the stocking and realized that he had more than enough needed to take the course. Mr. Bliss spent 6 weeks of the hardiest study of his life at that normal school, as it was called. Bliss was now recognized as an expert within the local area, and let me add, we might not have had great hymns from Philip Bliss had he not been able, through a dear godly lady, to help him with this. But then on December of 1876, while traveling to Chicago again to meet up with Dwight L. Moody in a meeting, he was on the Pacific Express train with his wife, and they traveled and they approached Estabula, Ohio, I think is how you say that. When the train was nearly across the bridge, it collapsed and the carriages fell into the ravine below. It was stated in many newspaper accounts at the time that Bliss escaped from the wreck, but the carriage caught fire, and Bliss returned to try to extricate his wife. No trace of either Mr. Bliss or his wife Lucy were discovered. 92 of the 159 passengers are believed to have died on that day. The people did find his luggage, and his trunk was sent on to Chicago. And there was a manuscript bearing lyrics of a rather unfinished hymn that Bliss was writing at the time, and you know it well, I will sing of my Redeemer. Soon thereafter, set to a tune specially written for it by James McGranahan, and I like this about this as a tribute to this great old hymn and Mr. Bliss. I Will Sing of My Redeemer was one of the first songs ever recorded by Thomas Edison and then shared with the world through the technology of recording. So Brother Dean is going to lead this. You've got the page. And, hey, something to think about, what Dwight Moody said. We as believers are to provide the lower lights. God will provide the salvation.
And we'll just remain seated and y'all sing along with me. Brightly beams our Father's mercy from his lighthouse evermore, but to us he gives the keeping of the lights along the shore. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the wave. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Dark the night of sin has settled, loud the angry billows roll. Eager eyes are watching, longing for the lights along the shore. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the wave. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Trim your feeble lamp, my brother, some poor sailor tempest toss, trying now to make the harbor in the darkness may be lost. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the wave. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save.